Hi, and welcome to Live with the Vibe, where we have the heart-to-heart conversations. I'm Julianne Cantarella.
I'm Jacqui Atcheson.
I'm Susan Greif.
And I'm Amie Blumberg.
And today, we are going to truly have a heart-to-heart conversation. Ladies, I'd like to address our audience and let them know today we are actually going to be talking a little bit about what's going on in the world today beyond COVID, what is happening with the protests and the marches and people who need to be heard. Very frankly and authentically and honestly, we had a conversation before we decided to film, and we went back and forth to decide to talk about and see how we could fit into this ourselves today when we were bringing our show to you. And I think what we kind of came down to was, how can we show up, again, being our genuine, authentic selves around this, be honest, and really have a conversation. We question, there's not a lot of diversity here in our group. We're well aware of that. But it doesn't mean that we don't have emotions around it. It doesn't mean that we can't have a dialogue around it. And it doesn't mean that we can't be seen and heard ourselves. So I hope you take time to listen to us today and know that we all are sending love and really peace to everyone during this unbelievably difficult time. And Susan, I'd like to start with you as our trauma expert, especially around ancestral trauma, which I think this really is undoubtedly about.
Yeah, it is. I think there is a lot of trauma, and every once in a while we are triggered once again to get back into that mindset of of being affected. And it has to do with, for the African Americans, it has to do with past their slavery, oppression, and it's constantly feeling triggered, constantly feeling subhuman, subpar, only because this is something that is constantly created not only through our cells, it's not only in our cell memory, but it's also in the culture being that, we were slaves, we were oppressed, and we have to fight to become equal. And in the situation like today, like the other day, it's not just about George Floyd. It is about Black people feeling subhuman to certain white people. And it's because they don't feel that their lives matter. And, for all those people, yes, all lives matter. But in this particular instance, they need to understand that Black lives do matter, and they shouldn't be treated less than. Even though our Constitution may say all men are created equal, they are, however, not created equal. As you can see with many of the diverse minorities, even women, in the workforce, let's just say for now. But I don't want to but every culture has an ancestral trauma that gets passed down in the cells, through the genotype, generation after generation, and in the way they were nurtured, and the belief system and the thought system. And until people are ready to question their belief system, question how they're raised, they will not break the cycle. So we need these people to be able to break the cycle. And I think a lot of them raising their voices together are becoming that. There is creating an awareness. It's like alchemy, until things, it's always black coal and lead until things start assimilating and heated up. And then they release a lot of the air and the gas and the extra stuff, and the lead there with the gold. So the point is that until we're ready to question our ancestral trauma and understand our culture, until we're able to have dialogue with other people and their culture and understand that we all have our own scars. And when we all have our own scars, we also have our own pain. But we tend to forget to ask each other, where does this pain come from? Because if we do, then we can start to understand, then we can empathize, and then we can forgive. And that opens the door. I had written a chapter in an anthology called Crossing Bridges. It was mostly about my life and how I had to cross the bridges and the fear of the troll underneath keeping me from crossing the bridges. However, I think now we need to start to cross the bridge of diversity and open up and create dialogue to understand where each other comes from.
Yeah.
And need to educate each other. That's it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this has to do with fear.
Yes.
Always out of fear is anger.
Yes.
And I think, and I mean that for actually the people who are not understanding the plight or why it's so important to hear and stand up for Black people in America. You know, we think, oh, it's 2020. It's not the same. Well,
no.
It is the same, unfortunately. We've made strides, but not to where we need to be. And I think so many people are looking at this as they're not viewing it as what it is. It's a loss of a human life. And I hope I can go here. I hope this is all right. I don't believe that all cops are bad. No one in this group believes that. But we all believe that change needs to be made. And this is, I believe, absolutely unequivocally a catalyst to change. I see people standing up all over the world.
It's global.
Time. It is global. It is global. And it's time. I'm sorry for talking. Amie, would you like to add?
Well, I think that what's really fascinating about what's happening, and spinning off of what Susan said, is it's impacting everybody, all generations, all ages. And I think, you know, Julianne, you and I, and Susan's, I think, well, all of us have young children, but Julianne and I have the youngest. And it's really fascinating to see when you talk about being authentic and standing up and believing in what you want. I watch my daughter, and I watch, you know, today the kinds of Facebook messaging or Instagram messaging that this young generation was talking about. And their voices are so different in terms of how they view these things versus other generations. And so what I'm really proud of is that they are standing out and they are speaking out. And unfortunately, you know, some has been more violent than others, but to watch these young people want to be involved to drive change and do it authentically, I think that's really the key here, where other generations might have tried and it's been suppressed, and we talked about that as a group. You know, it was even listening to Joe Biden's message this morning, and not getting political, but just to talk about the historical components of what's happened, to see a young generation who will be in business, who will be doing things, who will be evolving, really fight for what they believe is right and equality, and really seeing people as they are, but listening, I think is important. And I think the one thing, you know, we've all been trained as coaches to do a lot of listening. And I think right now people need to be listening. Not listening because they want to listen to be heard themselves or to hear their own voices, but to hear what other people are saying, because the value of that is incredible, because that can be the pivotal piece of change. And I think when we coach people, that's the pivotal piece in terms of what they do in their lives can be pivotal. So this is really a time of listening and really stepping out and standing up for what you believe in, but doing it in a way that's authentic and that's valuable. And I see that as this is a catalyst of time change. And as you said, Julianne, I think when you opened, there's a lot of trauma and fear that's attached to this, I think, for all of us, because we just don't know where the next change is coming from or how this will evolve and unfold. And so you just have to put one foot in front of the other, sort of being very cliche about it, but sort of moving forward and aligning yourself in a way that allows you to receive that change. And I think that's what's really important, is listening and receiving is very, very important during this time.
Sure.
So Jacqui, I'll pass it off to you, because I know you sat there quietly listening to us, but what are your thoughts here?
Well, I'm really emotional about this for a number of reasons right now. Well, I did a post this morning about the humanitarian issue regarding this. It had nothing to do with politics. It had nothing to do with how the police were being treated. That's a whole other issue, and I'll probably just talk about it in a minute. It's very humanitarian. I mean, Susan and I come from a home where our parents were in the Holocaust. You talk about ancestral trauma and the things we were taught. And I know as a human being, when my father said, this can happen again, be on your guard, I fought with my father tooth and nail. I never could believe that after what happened during the Holocaust or slavery, that people, that human beings could ever treat another human being like that again. I remember as a kid watching people taking in stray animals. You treat a stray better than you treat a fellow human being. It breaks my heart. I have a problem with this. I don't understand it. I just don't. And I have had instances, being a Jewish white woman, that I was put in positions of being or having anti-Semitic slurs and some physical things done to me and my sister when we were younger, growing up. And we grew up in a Jewish, Italian, and Irish neighborhood. And then when the busing came in, because busing was big in the mid-60s, and the Black kids came into my junior high school, they were fearful. And they had to stake their claim. And I knew it came out of fear. And we actually had some physical violence done to us again from the Black children. I didn't fight back. There was no point, because I understood what was going on for them. And if you just let it go, it does go away. It's almost a matter of respect. And that's how I viewed it then. I view it that way now. You don't fight back when people are oppressed. You just understand it, understand where it comes from. And it does go away if you're sensitive to the issues. And maybe because of my dad, I was, but I still couldn't believe that this could ever continue. It's 50 years later, 60 years later, and it just continues. But on this post, which is all I was trying to encapsulate in some sentences, I had some people that got on that were infuriated about how the police were being treated. And again, as another issue, whoever doesn't know me, I have one son-in-law that is in the news. And I have another son-in-law that's a New York City police officer. And things got extremely heightened. I have received so much information today that nobody sees in the press. My son-in-law has sent me things that horrified me beyond what you have seen. And now my other son-in-law is the New York City cop is on a 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. shift, 12 hours, no break until this is over. How can these people, and again, one bad apple, one bad cop does not make a force bad. The group bad looter does not make peaceful protesters bad. I can go on, and we all know this. So for me, and I'm just catching my breath, I just found this out before I got on the air, and I'm worried for my family. I'm worried for the human race. This shouldn't be going on. You know, you don't keep throwing stones. It just doesn't work. And for the people that are involved, that are looting, I mean, they're not watching me. I wish they're not watching anybody, and I understand why you're doing it. Again, it comes from the fear and feeling that nobody listens. But I know that Mr. Floyd's brother went there yesterday to pay respects. And if anybody watched him, he prayed with people, and he prayed and begged the looters to stop. He said his brother never would have wanted this. He said, you're destroying my family's name. I think we got it, guys. It's time to stop. New York City is going to be quarantined off from 96th Street down as of tonight. Just as a piece of information that everybody's going to hear very shortly. It's ugly. It's really ugly, the things I saw this afternoon. So that's where I'm at with this.
Yes, and I hear you, Jacqui. I do think though there are moments that we've been catching that have been positive.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm kind of feeling very frightened for my family along with the human race and what's going on now. That's what I'm feeling.
And I have to tell you the same, but I also believe that this is, well, not to be fatalistic, but this is happening for a reason. I think change is coming. I'm hopeful of that. And hopefully that the looters, of course, we certainly don't want that. But I think what we really need to focus on is the peaceful protesters.
Absolutely.
Those who are trying to make a change, those who are trying to be heard. And, you know, we always talk about as coaches, being seen, being heard, being listened to. We've reached that point. We've reached that point where this is happening 7 days in a row now. And people need to be aware of that no one wants to see this happen anymore.
Nobody.
No one.
And I think we need to also share that there are a lot of peaceful protests around the globe.
Right.
And when you see the rioters and the looters who are creating their own violence and it's not working for their cause, you know, we see it often because it's sensationalized, and I think we need to understand that the news will sell the news and they'll do whatever they can. Now, there are a lot of rioters, a lot of looters, and people are afraid now. All people are afraid, and all those people who are doing this, they are ruining it for the cause. I want to read a quote from Martin Luther King. He writes, if you want, one second. Hate begets hate. Violence begets violence. Toughness begets greater toughness. We must meet the forces of hate with the power of love. Our aim must never be to defeat or humiliate the white man, but to win his friendship and understanding. The ultimate weakness of violence is that it is descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the liar. You cannot murder the lie, nor establish the truth. Through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder the hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So the whole idea of the violence is not helpful. I think by showing love and understanding and compassion is what everybody needs to hear, what African Americans need to hear. We are holding a hand out to anyone out there who really feels they needed to connect. We are the white women. We represent the white woman, and we're so open to have dialogue and understanding and share your voices with others. So feel free to reach out to us and see what we can do to help you out there.
And I'd like to add one thing, because so many of the viewers that we work with and talk with are business owners. And I think right now, as a business person, it's really important that you take a look inside your own business to make sure that the messages that you convey to who works for you and who you trade with or you partner with, that you listen, that you really learn and you really get to know people and understand that, as you talk about it, Susan, that emotional component of what people are experiencing and feeling, but also what is it that they need? What is it that they want? Because what's really important is for you to have the heart-to-heart conversations and be authentic and really open up in a very different way, because sometimes they'll say, oh, well, we'll check the boxes and we'll take care of diversity this way. Well, it doesn't work that way. You really have to do it with a very thoughtful approach and with the people who it really impacts. And so I say to all of those business owners that do view and listen to us is really take a step back and learn from this experience, but think about how this piece of history and time is important to how you might pivot your business and the way that you look at who you interact with and who you partner with and how you work together with people within the industries that you're in. it's really important, really is.
Thank you, Amie.
I would just add one quick thing. Before you speak to someone that is not a white woman, such as yourself, or a white man, pause. Stop and ask yourself, as something's going through your head and you're going to say something, how would I take it if I was on the other side receiving this information? Stop and pause. And if you make a mistake, say you're sorry and mean it from the heart.
And I also like to add, you know, the violence is just a reaction to a lot of the anger. And it's like somebody posted on Facebook about their child being naughty. It's a trigger. They're reacting in a certain way. And we normally put, you know, naughty kids in timeout. But as my friend Jen Eden had said, when you think your kids need time out, it's really when they need time in. These people need their time in. They need to be heard. We need to understand them, and we need to help them. So at that note.
Thank you, ladies. I hope our audience felt embraced by us tonight. We encourage you to stand in your truth, lead with your heart, and have a dialogue, and listen to those around you. Don't be so quick to turn us off, and lead with anger. And with that, ladies, we'll say, I'm Julianne Cantarella.
I'm Susan Greif.
I'm Amie Blumberg.
I'm Jacqui Atcheson. Thank you for listening as we had this very heart-to-heart conversation.
And if you like our show, feel free to subscribe below and get the little bell so you get notified every time we're on.
And we'd love to hear from you on your comments about today.
Please comment. And if there's any suggestions, advice you'd like to share with the audience of how to get involved, please comment below. Anyway.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.